Today, we're going to be talking as part of our AI in Action series on how we've helped our customers revolutionize both their operations and their customer engagement in retail. We know that it is absolutely essential as we come into this challenging recessionary period that everyone be focused on improving their business. And we have seen in this recessionary period, as well as others, that retail really leads the way. As we come into this economic downturn, retail gets very smart, very fast about getting very lean and optimizing all of their back-end processes, as well as really looking for innovative ways to capture market share in existing markets, as well as to generate new markets. And what we're going to be talking about today is sort of the fundamental patterns that retailers use to succeed. And to make sure that we are able to answer your questions, I'd really love for this to be interactive. So if you have any questions, if anything pops up, go ahead and ask. I'll also have a period at the end where you can quiz me as well. When we're talking about retail, that optimization and engagement model really comes into four main areas. One, we want to help our customers really personalize the touch that they have with their customers. We want to make sure that you are engaging with your customers in a way that is going to be really compelling. It's going to be at the right level. It's going to be at the right time. And we really find that there are a lot of really excellent AI approaches to segmenting that market, as well as looking at the patterns of usage and interaction. We want to be making sure that our clients are understanding what their demand profile looks like, to be able to say that we're going to see changes in demand, that we're going to see an uptick or a downtick, that it's going to be regional, that it's going to be market by market, that we know how we have to change our supply chain, how we have to change our manufacturers, how we have to change our warehousing models in order to adjust with that evolving demand. We want to make sure that there is a profile for a complete customer journey. What we actually find is a lot of our customers haven't fully verticalized or horizontalized their marketplace yet. What we want to do is look for those adjacent areas where we can provide additional products, additional services, additional technology, additional value add to do two things. One, we definitely want to be capturing new revenue from the same customer base and attracting new customers for competitive advantage. But at the same time, those new products actually go into this fourth one, where they actually expand our ability to understand our customer profile. And as we get more data to be able to predict our customers' needs and our customers' timings, we're going to be able to create, through that more complete picture, have a more complete engagement model and understand new market capability or new market needs. When I get to the customer stories, it's going to be really interesting, because what a lot of times what happens is we come in one place in this cycle, and it starts a virtuous process where we say, hey, now that we have a little bit more of our demand understanding, now we can start talking about what our customer journey looks like, and we can see how our customers move through our product space. Now that we know where our customers move through our product space, let's see where they exit our product space and say, hey, that's an adjacent area that we can capture. When we go and capture that new area, let's add a data component that allows us to understand that customer beta better. Let's create an app, let's create a device, let's take some data back into our ecosystem so that we can see how our customers are actually behaving and interacting with our product long term, so we can build new and better products to address those customers, as well as make those products more compelling to customers in our marketplace. It really just takes one small change in one area to start to create that cascade of improvement through the organization, especially when it's tied in with an analytics initiative. So when we're talking about analytics and AI, it's very important to understand that data science is probably the easiest part. That's not to undersell the great capabilities that data scientists have in math and understanding, but it really is an entire life cycle that's tied in with the business understanding, the data capture and management, that data science component, of course, an operational component, and then a change capture and business integration component, where you're recognizing what those new opportunities are. When we go and we work with our customers in analytics, what we often find is they have pockets of excellence in their organization. Often they have some great data scientists, but what they don't have is that complete life cycle. Now, I'm thinking of a customer where we went in and they had been working on a very complex algorithm to understand their product ecosystem. And they've had 4 data scientists working on it for 6 months. And we said, that seems like a really silly question to ask. Let's go back to the business. So we went back to the business, and what had happened was the business has needed a particular thing. They had said it to the data scientist. The data scientist said, yes, we understand. And they translated in their head to a data science problem. And they got so caught up in the data science problem that they didn't realize they had actually changed the success criteria, and they had made it much harder than it needed to be. And just by going back and refocusing on the business, we were able to rederive that AI model in about 4 weeks and get it back into their ecosystem in another 4. And that's just one of the gaps that happen in this life cycle. When we're talking about AI success, you have to have this holistic model. And we'll talk a little bit about how we've implemented that for some other customers that maybe you can take some examples from. But it's really about enabling our customers to get more access to their data so they can actually discover in their data what value they have. Then we need to transform that data into intelligence to provide decision support for more and better decisions. Now, that can be prompts to your internal staff to know what they should be working on, what they should be thinking about, where there might be challenges, where there might be shortfalls in product, where there might be manufacturing difficulties, changes in demand. And it's really important to think about how we enable that decision support. Because if you're thinking about, say, demand fluctuation, when you're talking about demand fluctuation, you don't want to give them a big spreadsheet and have them tease it out. You want to say, demand is changing off forecast. Here's what you want to go do. We want to really zero in on what is actionable about that intelligence. And it's the same thing that we would want with your end customers. We want light touch. We don't want to be bothering them. We don't want to be breaking them out of their life, but we want to be adding value. So with that customer understanding, with that growing omni-channel support, what we can do is say, hey, this section of your customer base is going to be really interested in this development in this product, or this market segment is going to be really interested in this new service offering that you're developing, and making sure that you've got that right level of touch that always keeps your customers engaged and always keeps them interested. And the last part is automating. Your human capital is probably the single biggest challenge that you have in terms of acquisition, retention, and then, of course, the cost of labor. What we want to do is we want to automate everything that is easy, everything that is simple, everything that is repetitive that can be. And there are so many back-end components that are available for automation in any industry, where we can really come in and say, hey, with a little more intelligence, with a little more data, with a little more thoughtfulness, we can start abstracting this away and making it so that your valuable resources have more to do that will actually drive your top and bottom line. So there are 4 major components with every data modernization, helping a client move from a reactive model to that proactive model, moving from an on-prem model to a cloud model, moving from a process-first decision matrix to a data-first decision matrix, whatever it happens to be. That transformation starts with governance. It always starts with InfoSec. It always starts with security. It also always starts with privacy. It always starts with compliance. Understanding how to quantify and qualify that data, understanding who we can give access to and who we can't, and how we can use that data. Obviously, especially in the retail market, with customers in, say, California, potentially customers in Europe, there are multiple privacy regulations that are really important. The good news is that a lot of them are converging. If we look at, for example, CCPA, which probably applies to you, if we look at GDPR, which applies to you if you're in Europe, you can see that there's a lot of similarities. CCPA is really GDPR light with a couple of twists. The good news is that there's a direction that all of this is going in. There is a series of best practices, and we can apply those best practices in order to create a flexible model that allows you to get to a governed state faster. Now, we did this for a group that does have some retail components, but they're one of the largest servicers of nuclear power plants on the globe. And we went in and they said our compliance is very complicated. And we worked with them and we boiled it down, and we wound up there are 4 classes of data. And if there are 4 classes of data for nuclear power, then we can do it for anybody. And once you understand what those broad classes are, then it gets really easy to start identifying value cases where you can execute inside the realm of that low risk, easy compliance model. The second piece, once you have that basic foundation in place, is to start talking about data aggregation. You probably have data all over your organization. But the question is all of that data valuable? And probably not. We see a lot of customers want to boil that ocean, build a giant data lake and say, we're going to bring everything in there. But what we find is 80 to 90% of that data never gets used, never gets touched. And what that is an operational cost. It's a carrying cost. It is a cloud cost. And it is a cost for that engineering. So what we want to do is we actually want to start dissuading customers from saying, hey, let's bring everything into a data lake, and say, hey, we want to build a data lake, but we only want to add that valuable information. We want to reduce that operational cost to make sure that we're really driving data. And we want to give a small group of trusted users, our data scientists, our analysts, access to more data through something that's a little lighter weight, like a data mesh or a data fabric, where they can access that data and they can explore that data, and they can say that data is useful or it's not. If it's useful, then we do want to bring it into the data lake. We do want to experiment with it in data science. We do want to start baking it into our production pipelines, but only once we think it's valuable. It's not about bringing all the data in. It's about, table by table, looking at it and having someone say, this is valuable for this decision. I want to promote this into a production pipeline, and which is where we get to our XOps and our automation. One of the big challenges that every organization has is just not enough time. There's not enough resources. One way that we can solve some of that is by being a little smarter about how we govern our data and how we choose to aggregate our data, but then building a real automation pipeline to manage that data. And again, we'll be talking about examples of all of these in just a few minutes. But what we want to do is say, hey, there's this data and it is valuable. So I have the authority. I'm just going to push this button and I'm going to promote it. And within an hour, it's going to be in my production data science laboratory, and I'm going to be able to experiment with it. And then a month later, it's going to ask me, is this really valuable? Have I found value in there? And I say yes or no. And it either stays in production forever or leaves. And there are audits and automated audits and checkboxes. What we find is a lot of people are struggling day to day just to keep the lights on, just to keep the plumbing moving, because they have some of these antiquated systems, because they've built these highly manual systems. By going in and targeting automation, we can often free up between 10 and 90% of that human capital on that team. And that can be retasked to building better systems and building more analytics. And then, of course, we get to analytics acceleration. Like I said, the easiest part of data science is probably data science. The best practices for how to identify business value and create a really fast business case for something with a clear ROI and investment, moving the business acceptance criteria into the language of data science is a skill set unto itself. Finding those data SMEs and then cataloging that information, making sure that you have a repeatable pipeline for delivering that analytics into production, and then being able to get that analytics back to the user in reporting, in alerts, in apps, whatever it happens to be. We know that whole life cycle has to be there. And again, just like with the business life cycle, where engaging in improvement in one area of the business highlights the need and value of engaging in the other areas, working in any one of these areas to advance frees up resources in order to invest in the other areas. And it's not necessarily linear. We're not saying you have to start with this and then you have to go here and then it's this and then it's that. We've seen a lot of companies do that sort of waterfall thinking, where they say we have to have this data platform complete before we really start with data science. And what ends up happening is the data platform's never complete and the data science never gets the complete needs. We really advocate for a nimble, agile approach. And again, we'll talk about the stories where we've done this and we've seen this virtual cycle in retail, where you take a smaller use case and you figure out what is the smallest piece of data governance I can build to succeed on this use case? What is the smallest piece of data aggregation I can build to succeed on this use case? What is the smallest amount of automation I can build in order to free up resources? And the smallest amount of best practice improvement in my analytics cycle I can make today that's going to get us there faster. And you take it a piece at a time. Now, you want to have that long-term vision. You say, we're going to have a hybrid cloud, medallion data lake model with full automation. Great. That's your long-term vision. But what is the piece you bite off today? And bite it all off at the same time. Use it as a prototype. Find that right use case, that right minimal viable product that's going to let you build that modern approach that's going to reduce your friction and increase your optimization. And at the same time, actually get something out the door. and use that as your foundation for repeated success. To say, great, we know what our data governance program needs to look like. Here's the smallest piece. What's our next case? Great, we're going to have to add this little piece right here. Okay, we know what our data aggregation looks like. We built some of it. We've got it working. Great, now we need to improve this part over here. Or XOps, we've automated our data delivery. Great, but now we need to automate some of our data quality. What's the smallest number of data quality checks we can make that's going to make an improvement? Okay, now we're going to put it in here. And every time you do that, really be thinking about that ROI. Always have a business case to make sure that at every step you're reducing friction and you're making it easier to deliver. And we have a couple of great customer stories. But before I go into those, does anyone have any general questions talking about optimization versus market capture, talking about data unification versus data governance, anything that I've talked about so far, or anything else? It's a great opportunity to play Stump the Chump. All right, everyone is eager to get to their margaritas today. All right, so thinking about retail, thinking about value acceleration, thinking about using AI in the marketplace to really make a difference. So this was for a major retailer. They own their own delivery chain down to the endpoint, and they had a real challenge where they had to do the restocking at the endpoint. They couldn't rely on the managers in the stores, so they had to go in and do the restock. They were all in coolers, and so they said, hey, could we do this with vision? So we went in, very quickly built a POC. We got the model up to 95% accuracy. So now instead of going in and opening up all the coolers and counting all the racks, the endpoint servicer could just go up and for each cooler, just take a picture, 5, 6 pictures, and it would recognize all the products, all the counts. It could see the product depth. The spinny would spin, their phone would turn into a space heater for about a minute because it was a pretty heavy algorithm to do all that vision processing on a mobile endpoint because we couldn't rely on connectivity. And it used to take them about 4 to 6 hours to service an endpoint. And now it took them about 2 minutes. So they're driving to this endpoint and they've already saved 5 hours of labor on average. And it could do the bottle count. It knew what the restock order was for the store. It would do the difference. It would put it in. They could get the manager's approval and done. But what we did is we actually worked with the customer to identify a value-add business model. So a lot of their labor is spending time in transportation. Part of the reason why they could only do 1 to 2 endpoints in a day is they have to drive between them. Well, that drive time we can't take out. They still have to drive and do that. So instead of having them drive for an hour and then spend 2 minutes in the store and maybe get an extra store in a day, what we did is, and maybe get in 4 extra stores in a day, we said, let's do 3 extra stores in a day. But while we're there, let's talk about product placement. Let's bring them advertising. Let's do an upsell. Let's give them new sample products. So instead of just going in and rushing to get through this endpoint, they were going in and upselling each of the managers. So it changed their engagement model and improved their engagement model and improved their product position in the store. And it allowed them to radically change their labor profile for this task, saving them quite a bit of money. And we did that really quickly with a really simple model because 95% accuracy for bottle counting is perfectly acceptable. If it's a little off, if the manager orders 1 case too many or 1 case too few, that is not the important thing here. What is important is getting that servicer from store to store and adding value with each stop. So this was for another organization. They were looking for opportunities to use AI, and we went in and said, well, where do you think you're losing money? Where do you think we could optimize? And they said, you know what? We have a really complicated product profile where electronics manufacturer, we do circuit boards, we do chips, we do power supplies, we do anything that might be in electronics. But we find that our customers are buying our chips because they like our chips, but they're not buying the power supplies and they're not buying the heat sinks and they're not buying the boards, which are all necessary. You can't use the chips without buying these other components. They must be buying them from a competitor. So we went through with them and said, why are you having these problems? And they said, well, we think our product catalog is too complicated. We said, great, let's build you a recommender. So this is an Amazon style recommender. People who bought this also buy this. People who buy this chip also buy this power supply and also buy this circuit board. Only problem is the product catalog is constantly evolving. It's updating, it's changing. And so the way that each product works, or the way that each product interacts, products are going out of stock, products are being upgraded, products are being changed, product numbers are changing. And so what we did is we built this recommender along with the pipeline to continually retrain it against the updated catalog. But we also built a rules engine that said, if the product is not available, this is how you find the replacement product, because there's always a replacement product in their catalog. This is how you locate it using a series of rules. And so what ended up happening is their data was all over their organization. Like I said, we've got those four things. We got data governance, data unification, analytics acceleration, and XOps. Their data is all over the organization. So we said, we're going to build you a data science laboratory. And we were able to build it in a few days because we know what they should look like. So we just laid it down for them and said, here's our standard data science laboratory. Now we're going to pull your data in. Now we're going to build you an algorithm. And 12 weeks later, they had their algorithm. Took them a few more weeks to get it into production, but it had a 15% improvement in product attach right out the gate. They made about $15 million in the first 8 weeks. We estimated about 50. So that should be about $50 million for the first year, not 50,000. $50 million. I'll fix that. While we were in there, we looked and said, there are all these other scenarios that this recommender doesn't cover, but we can. And we found about 40 other recommender scenarios, which will total about $150 million of top line revenue. And they already have, like I said, you want to build that minimal viable product and you want to reuse it. They already had their data science laboratory in place. Check. They already had their data unification plan in check and built. Check. They already had it 1 ML pipeline to deliver this and keep it trained in production. It was a little specialized. So what we did is we generalized it, and then we were able to start driving those additional ML models. So again, we started small. We recognized there were a couple different problems. We went through the governance hoops. We went through the unification hoops. We did the analytics acceleration. But the result is top line product attach, because they recognized a place where they were leaking customer buy. And we're currently there working with their manufacturing division to say, how can we use Vision ML on the line in order to improve quality, which would be another optimization. This is a great story. This is a global tire manufacturer. They really wanted to be competitive, and they wanted to do an as a service. So they came to us and said, could we use AI on a smartphone in order to detect tread depth and make them pay by the micrometer, which would be equivalent to the mile? And we said, we think so. Let's find out. So over about 6 weeks, we built a preliminary model that could be mounted on a smartphone that could actually estimate tread depths down to about 400 microns, which is enough for their needs. We helped them build it up as a product, build it up as a pipeline, and they got really excited. They now lease their tires as a service every month. You go and you just run your phone, open up the app and run your phone over the top of the tire, and it tells you how much you drove and how much you owe. This is a really exciting conversion. This takes the cost of buying new tires and premium tires way down. It's money in the pot, but it's also money amortized month over month, so people aren't necessarily getting stuck with seasonality or downturn effects because people need their tires. The added result is they said, well, wait a minute. With this sort of infrastructure, this sort of flexible approach that you built on the back end, we can do more. So we actually worked with them to integrate more intelligence, both from IoT devices and from the same sort of AI-based visual inspection, into their fleet management service. And they leapfrogged their competition so much that they're now managing their competitors' tires in fleet, which means that they now have the ability to replace their competitors' tires in fleet. Super exciting for them. They created a new services division. They created a new business model, a new services division, and a way to consume market share. And this is what I was talking about with that virtuous cycle. We started with one question about, could we use AI to drive a different business model? Great. Now that we can do that, we have this knowledge that says, could we drive this same type of thing into an adjacent area? Yes. Can we add this to our fleet management? Yes. Can we use this to displace our market? Yes. Once you start getting on that cycle, once you start making those improvements, it's a really compelling change throughout the organization. And whether it happens at a division level or whether it happens at the corporate level, success attracts attention. And it's super exciting when we get to work with a customer to do that. This was a great project for a large electronics distributor. They have, sorry, am I still presenting, Didi?
Yes, you're still presenting.
Excellent. Teams just got weird, so I can't see the presentation anymore. Okay.
Oh, no.
Awesome. So they have warehouses filled with electronics, and they wanted to do better inventory management. We see this a lot. We've done this for a lot of customers. Sometimes we fly drones around. Sometimes we use robots. In this case, they wanted to do it with an iPad for a very particular reason. So we went in and we built a series of vision algorithms that not only could see what was on the face of things, but just like with that cooler story, they can also estimate depth. They can also do 3D. So they could see broken pallets. They could estimate pallet content. We have some really great IP around that. And what they're able to do is dramatically improve their cycle count accuracy and reduce the time. But in addition, the owners of this organization were really passionate about helping people with disabilities. So because this is now an easier access, a lot of their cycle counters are now challenged people who might not otherwise be able to get a really interesting job like this. And they go around, they work with the iPad, and they take the cycle count. And now instead of getting a cycle count once a month and having to close down a shift or two to do it, they can get a cycle count every day. It takes less labor. They have more accuracy. They can plug that data into their demand forecasting. They can plug that into their loss forecasting. And again, like I said, it's a virtuous cycle. You build something in your analytics space, it provides more data, more expertise, more capability to then transfer into other areas of analytics. This is my last story for today, and then I really do hope that you'll ask me some questions. But this was for a national retailer. They had a legacy implementation on-prem, massively parallel MPP database, Hadoop install, big clip machines turning over, and it was really brittle. They wanted to do new and exciting analytics, and they just couldn't because they couldn't grow the metal fast enough. They couldn't manage it. It was getting antiquated, and the licenses were so expensive. So what we did is we built them a very modern metadata-driven data lake-based platform in the cloud, and we migrated all of their data over. The migration from beginning to end, platform definition, everything took about 9 months. And then it got really exciting because now that they're no longer stuck in that on-prem environment where they can't grow without big costs and long timelines, we were able to work with them to start improving every aspect of that analytics. We worked with them on governance, we worked with them on that unification, we worked with them on the automation. And what they wound up with is a completely automated modern system. It is saving them millions of dollars a year because they've taken those hardware and software licenses away. Yes, they do pay those cloud costs, but they only pay for what they use because everything is now elastic, and their usage is tied to literally thousands of value cases at this point that are all deriving high ROI. We decreased their analytics time to value by 90%. It used to take them months to build a new pipeline, months to build a new algorithm. Now they can do it every 2 weeks. You want a new pipeline? That's great. And if it's in a certain classification in their governance scheme, you can do it in a couple of minutes because it can just be automated if the risks are low enough. And then they were able to do demand forecasting. Now they're able to do supply chain optimization, robotic fulfillment. All of these cases that I've talked about before, they're doing all of them. And they're doing all of them in store, and they're very excited, and they have terabytes of data currently under management, and they know that every single byte of that data is valuable because it's tied to a value case that's tied to a metadata-driven framework, and they know exactly what their ROI is across their ecosystem. And it was very exciting to work with them. This in total was approximately a 3-year journey. Started with that single use case to say, hey, we know we need to go to the cloud. We helped them find that initial value case. We helped them build that first POC, but that first POC is still in their production ecosystem because we know that we need to build things that are extensible. We know that you need to build things that you can grow with. And so over time, it grew and grew. But that first use case is, well, it might have been retired, but I'm pretty sure that that use case or something close to it is still in their production ecosystem, driving value today. So we know that retail is very tied to the marketplace. We know that retailers need to optimize. We know that retailers need to capture that market. We know that you need to differentiate. And we're super excited to be able to present some of these stories to you. Super excited to talk through kind of a loose methodology of how to get there, making sure that you've got all those components, making sure that you're aligning on Agile, making sure that you've got that MVP and are really accelerating your success.